Okay, well, thanks for joining us and inviting us into your office here.
My pleasure. Yeah.
All right, very cool.
Great to chat.
Yeah, so I'm curious a little bit about your background. Can you tell us what you do for a living? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So my name is Paul Eremenko. I am today CEO of an AI startup. We're trying to build an AI engineer. It's called P1 AI. My background is as an aerospace engineer. So I'm one of those kids who learned how to fly before he learned how to drive,
uh-huh.
and ultimately started in kind of the big company world. Ultimately became chief technology officer at Airbus, the world's biggest maker of commercial airplanes. That you probably know well, and have had a couple of other industry roles. Spent some time in the Pentagon, and then this is now on my second startup. And my husband is Justin. He's an actor. We're very different people, but in very complementary ways. And he has done some stage work. He's done some movies, some full feature films, a lot of commercial work, and nowadays a lot of verticals, which is kind of the new thing.
The new
The new
medium.
thing in media, yeah.
That's very cool. You played a big role in creating the Airbus. My brother and my father are professional pilots, and so of course they're in Airbuses all the time.
There you go, yeah.
That's really neat. So, how did you guys meet?
We met online, as one does in this day and age, especially just in the waning days of the pandemic. That was about 4 years ago now, I guess. And we got married just about a year ago. We just had our 1 year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Where did you get married?
We got married in Paso Robles in wine country.
Okay, that's beautiful. My parents live there, actually. So,
Really?
yeah, really beautiful
Yeah.
spot.
That's great.
So you got married. Naturally enough, you decided to have a baby.
Naturally enough, I mean, obviously, the conversation probably dates back to maybe like our second or third date.
Yep.
To manage expectations, right? Are you interested? Are you interested? And we were both interested in having a son, and so.
And what was the process like? Do you have to choose a surrogate, an egg donor? How did that all go?
Yeah, it's a fairly involved process, but very rigorous, and for us has gone quite smoothly so far. We'd used an anonymous egg donor, a young lady named Meg, and that's all really we know about her, who lives in Hawaii, who has a Quebecois and Japanese background, and is an equestrian and a law student.
Okay.
And we sort of enjoyed, she wrote about her life and what her passions in life and her motivations, and we vibed with that. And so she donated, and this was a fresh egg cycle specifically for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've been working with an agency in Las Vegas called New Gen Families to match with a gestational carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did that. Her name is Liz, so we're excited, and so now we have embryos, and we're in the process of using Herasight to try and understand those embryos a little bit better.
That's right. We're about to give you a report here in the coming days.
That's right.
I'm curious a little bit more about the egg donor. So, what were you looking for? Did you have a kind of preconceived set of traits or characteristics, or did you think like let's interview some people or look at some catalogs and see who we vibe with?
Yeah, I think it was mostly the latter. I don't think we had any hard and fast criteria.
Mm-hmm.
We're mostly interested in personality, just to be perfectly honest, and insofar as that can come through, I think the agency that we used for the egg donor was very good at trying to elicit that in some of the profiles. And so, you also get a little bit of indirect interaction through the donor agency.
Right.
And we just really, really vibed with her personality.
It's really interesting because I've always thought myself that's exactly what I would focus on, because it's hard to measure, and we don't really have predictors for personality.
That's right.
We know it's moderately heritable. So if you have someone who's just kind of friendly and creative and interesting, and it seems like, given that it's really hard to measure, that's exactly what you should want to select
100%.
for.
And then Herasight will take care of everything else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. And did they put her through any kind of carrier screening? I'm actually curious how that goes, like to look for monogenic disorders and anything like that. Yeah.
Yes, there was a full report available pre-match even.
Yep.
Yeah,
I figured. Then the question is, well, why do more genetic testing? So you generate a bunch of embryos, and what are you guys interested in for genetic testing? Is there a family history on your side, your husband's side? Even with no family history, of course, there are all kinds of things that can come up, but what kind of led you to us and to genetic testing in
Yeah,
general?
I think it was a couple of considerations. I mean, one is that we're both quite data driven people,
Yep.
and we think that more data is always better, right? So if the technology is there to give us more information about each embryo and kind of make sure that the kid gets as good of a start in life as we can manage, I almost feel like it's our moral duty, our obligation to ensure that we use that data to make decisions if we can. But sort of more tactically, more pragmatically, my husband, who is the sperm donor,
Mm-hmm.
does have a history of some family history of things like diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
and to the extent that we can try and minimize the kid's risk of some of those. Again, I think it's our duty and moral obligation to do that.
It makes sense. And of course, male age, you guys are still pretty young, but some of our customers are in their 50s, even 60s. And male age is associated with some increased risk for autism, schizophrenia, et cetera. That's why I'm going to use it. But
Yeah.
that's
No, absolutely. I mean, I
that's
think all of those things
yeah,
are, even if you don't have a family history,
exactly.
still there is a risk.
De novo
And
mutations. Yeah, yeah,
100%.
exactly. So I'm curious about his background. Where's your husband from originally?
Justin, he's Guyanese.
Yeah.
So this is British Guyana in South America.
Hmm.
For those who may be geographically challenged, it's one of the few English-speaking countries in Latin America. And his background, his genetic or ethnic background is Portuguese, South Asian, Indian,
Hmm.
and West African,
Very
and
interesting.
and a bunch of other things mixed in there as well.
Right, which is
I think
typical.
Irish. I think there's some Irish in there as well.
But yeah, that is typical of Guyana. So a lot of different ethnicities. So
It's quite the melting pot, and the food is
so you've been.
as a result. Oh yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. That's actually, speaking of that, what do your families think about genetic testing? Sometimes people are completely fine with it. Others are like, "What? What are you doing here, Gattaca baby?"
Yeah,
What's
yeah. I mean, we've gotten the Gattaca baby from some friends, but our families have been super supportive.
Yep.
We come on both of our sides, right? Folks are very well educated. On my side, academics. On Justin's side, sort of in the finance world, and I think everyone, again, I think everyone gets that more data is better.
Yeah,
Leads to better decisions.
I suppose here in the Bay Area where we are right now, that's an especially common view. So that's always been my view. But we read articles by journalists all the time. We're like, well, people, they're going to be overwhelmed by information. They don't really know how to decide for themselves. So
That's a little patronizing, isn't
it sure is, but they say it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I think from what I've seen, and again, we have yet to see the results from Herasight, right? But excited to see them, and I think the way that I've seen sample results presented, it makes it pretty digestible and pretty actionable. Obviously, we fully expect to have to make some difficult trade-offs, right? In the among the probabilities of the different polygenic traits. But again, it's either you make those trade-offs with the best heuristics that you can, or you throw it to chance. And so I'd rather gamble on our heuristics.
And that's exactly, I suppose you can't answer this question in advance, but I was going to ask what kinds of things you're weighting. Maybe it'll actually come up, when you're actually looking at the results, but
Yeah, there's so
disease
many,
traits and these kinds of things.
but there are so many, right?
Yeah.
That you guys are able to score for or
Yep.
test for, that it's very difficult for us. We've tried to have the hypothetical discussion, right? If there is an increased risk of schizophrenia, right, but a decreased risk of diabetes, how do you trade those two? And I think having the discussion in the hypothetical is almost impossible.
Exactly.
But I think once we have the numbers in front of us, I think we will come to, and I'm almost confident that it'll be a consensus decision.
Since we're in hypothetical worlds right now, talking about hypothetical results, what kinds of predictors would you like in an ideal world? So we can predict various kinds of disease traits. We've got IQ and height and that sort of thing. Have you thought about anything like that? Like what could we add to our list of traits that would be interesting to you? And I'll just preface it by saying severe depression is coming soon, so that people can test for that if they have a family history of it, et cetera. Anything come to mind?
Well, I mean, I think I would almost flip the question back to you and say, what is within the realm of the feasible? I'm not a geneticist.
Yep.
Right? I'm an aerospace engineer. What is within the realm of the feasible for polygenic trait testing? Obviously, the one you mentioned. Can we do personality traits? Right.
Yes.
IQ is a very imprecise, right, kind of thing. Like, how do you score on a very specific type of test? Probably not a good predictor of success in life.
Yeah.
But there are probably others that other facets of your personality and cognitive abilities that could be very, very interesting if you could tease them apart across.
I think that's exactly right. And I think about that myself because I'm going to go through this. But it looks like neuroticism is well on its way. So we think we'll be able to predict that decently well. Neuroticism, and the one that a lot of people want, and there are genome-wide association studies being done right now, is conscientiousness. And one of the things you mentioned, IQ is a bit nebulous. I mean, there's something that maps onto general intelligence, but there are lots of different aspects of it: verbal, reasoning, spatial, et cetera. And it's always going to be difficult to fully capture what we call intelligence. But we do know that conscientiousness really correlates with lots of good life outcomes.
Yeah, I believe that.
Not just things like private income, but friends and all these kinds of things, social relationships. So. Yeah, I wonder if you would take a look at that. Like,
Sure.
if we could,
Of course. There's many axes of I think cognitive and personality traits. I think those would be super, super interesting. Is empathy heritable?
It is, and there, psychologists make this distinction between affective empathy and cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is sort of a theory of mind, and that's one of those things where, people with Asperger's, they live perfectly good lives, but they often have poor theory of mind. Even if they have full affective empathy, they care about people, et cetera, but they don't quite get them all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's an interesting one. Here, again, we're in Silicon Valley. A lot of people have Asperger's. A lot of our team has Asperger's. It's really not a disability, but there are some people who would select in favor of it or maybe away from it. Affective empathy is a really interesting one. I think that's what you're getting at, and it does correlate with moral personality. So how you treat other people.
Yeah.
When you see a person or an animal in pain, do you kind of feel their pain from a distance and respond accordingly?
Yeah.
And I assume you would want to select in favor of affective.
Generally, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
At the expense of what? But yes.
That is a good question. Yeah. So things will get a little bit complicated if we do have good results, GWAS, on personality traits. They are along a bell curve like so many other things. And so it's not clear that you would want to just maximize any one trait.
That's right.
But you'd probably want to make sure it's sort of in the normal range or something.
Normal range and well balanced with others, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I'm interested, how many kids do you anticipate having, and how many do you want?
I have one.
Only one? Oh, okay.
Only
Good.
one.
Well, you've got two other babies here. You've got two dogs with you. So yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Very interesting. How did you choose? Your husband versus you. Was that a discussion or?
So it certainly was a discussion. I think he is much more interested in procreating and extending his family. I'm sort of less interested in that. I don't think I'll love the kid any less if he's not genetically related to me. So
right. And your babies are also the ideas you've birthed and brought into the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool. Okay. So you've been part of like a major corporation, one big startup, so Airbus, right? And you've got another startup. I'm curious, what's the big idea behind this startup right now?
This startup, so we're trying to build an AI engineer. So the idea, and this is for the physical world, not a software engineer, but like a mechanical and electrical engineer.
Okay.
The reason I became an aerospace engineer in the first place was I wanted to build things that are kind of at the outer limits of complexity that we know how to do as a species.
Yep.
And I think that AI promises to allow us to sort of transcend the limitations. There is, I think, an upper limit on what human organizations can do. Because if you think about like building a commercial airplane or something like that, you have thousands, actually tens of thousands of humans who are working on little problems, right, that all come together through a very complex process to create this thing that's incredibly safe, right, incredibly reliable, and works as a whole. That is not I don't think that's an infinitely scalable process. So if you want to build things, starships and Dyson spheres, right, and things like that, I don't think the existing approach of having just 100,000 humans now, right, and working together on it really scales. And so I think AI has the potential to allow us sort of superhuman engineering capabilities. And we're starting with junior engineering capabilities, right? We're trying to replicate a human junior engineer, but obviously the ambition is to help us build things that we can't build today as a species.
And do you think that could be done without what might be called AGI or ASI? Could we just have really good LLMs or some successor to LLMs do that? Or do you think you need something that has some kind of consciousness, problem-solving ability?
Well, I don't know that consciousness and problem-solving abilities are synonymous necessarily,
Yeah.
right? I do think that the question of consciousness apart, right, whether consciousness is a construct and is just very pattern matching at a sufficient level of complexity, right, or something else, I think that question we don't need to answer for purposes of engineering design,
Right.
right? I think that engineering reasoning, we are reasonably confident that we can get to human level. So today we are a junior level engineer. Like our agent can deliver capabilities at the level of an entry level engineer in an organization. So that's already a form of AGI, right? Maybe it's not the full spectrum of what a junior engineer could do, but it's a very significant part of that spectrum. I think the current paradigm in AI will get us to average engineer, maybe expert engineer in some ways. Whether it gets us super intelligence, unclear. I think jury is still out on whether there needs to be a fundamental change,
right,
from existing sort of transformer type models.
Okay, but then that goes back to the question of whether consciousness is necessary for something like superintelligence, because an LLM could solve a problem presumably better and better, but what makes it then at some point a superintelligence? Doesn't it require something like consciousness, or is there something else that would define a superintelligence, do you think?
I think superintelligence is the ability to solve physical system problems, right?
Okay.
Better than humans. So I think, again, I think in our case, we don't need to grapple with the deep philosophical questions of like, what makes us human? Because engineering is a fairly algorithmic task.
Right.
Engineering for the physical world is a very complex algorithmic task that's much harder than writing software, right? But nonetheless, you're still trying to optimize the structural mechanics and fluid mechanics, right, and thermal, electromagnetics, et cetera, of the physical world. So it is a navigable problem without some kind of metaphysical consciousness, right, or concept like that.
What about back to your future child?
Yeah.
So this child's going to be born in a very different world.
Yeah.
And do you think particular personality traits, I don't know, maybe even intelligence, something like this, are there going to be certain kinds of traits that are especially needed, demanded, so to speak, in a future economy? Can we even predict that?
I don't think we can really predict it, right? Yeah. I get asked frequently, apart from my future child, I get asked frequently, folks with children, is what advice should I give to kids going to college? Like, what should they major in?
Yeah.
Is it still relevant to major in computer science, which probably would have been the default answer of the last 20 years? Is have your kid do that. Today, I think we're seeing a huge, like, tectonic shift in the software engineering world, right? Of what kind of skills are useful and what kind of skills, folks can't find a job with. So forecasting 20 years into the future when this kid's going to college, I think is nearly impossible. I think we are marching ever closer to the proverbial singularity, right? Where things are, the reason it's called the singularity, right, is not because things blow up, right, but because you have some event horizon behind which you can't see.
Yes.
Right. And I think we're getting ever closer to an event horizon beyond which it's very difficult to predict what society is going to look like and what the human experience is going to be. I do think to actually answer your question, right? Oh. I do think that some of the traits that make us very human, like empathy, I think will be increasingly relevant and prized because those will probably be the most difficult to replicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ability not only to read minds, but to actually sort of enjoy one another's company, to act appropriately when somebody's in pain, that sort of thing. Not. Right. Yeah, okay, so this is interesting. I mean, Tyler Cowen and others who think about AI, they often, and they've been saying this for years, we need to learn to work with the AI. But your view is, especially if there's a kind of singularity, we don't even know what that would look like in 20 or 30 years.
I think our relationship with AI has a couple of different paths, right? There's certainly the path of there are AIs and they become members of society that you kind of have to learn to coexist with, and they do some things and we do other things, right? There is the model of where AI, you have the fast takeoff and the AI becomes sort of a super intelligent oracle in the sky, so to speak, in which case we need to carve out our space and make nice with the oracle in the sky. Right. There is also the merging scenario where a technology like Neuralink allows us to be one with the AI, where there's not really a distinction. And I think it's very, very difficult to predict which of those scenarios is going to come to pass.
So do you worry at all about value alignment then? In at least one of those scenarios where we're learning or we're living with the AI, does that mean that we need to, and is it even possible to program an AI such that it's not going to override our values or value something very different than us? And, the proverbial extinction event where basically its values either are or
it optimizes for paperclips.
Yeah, or it evolves to become hostile toward ours. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, so the modern AI paradigm, right, of deep neural networks is fundamentally anthropomorphic in its origin, right? Like we decided the neural network is called a neural network because it's a bunch of neuron-like computational objects, and they all exhibit this emergent property, which seems a lot like intelligence, right? Yeah. And so I think the anthropomorphic principle is the one I would fall back on in trying to answer a question like that, which is then to say, well, how do we ensure that kids grow up to be aligned to our values and don't become psychopathic murderers?
Right.
And sometimes they do, right? So there's an alignment failure. Obviously, if it's a super powerful thing and it becomes a little bit misaligned, you want to make sure that it is not the psychopathic killer. But in general, I think there's the sort of this notion of like pre-training and post-training in AI models, right? Where pre-training is the foundational intelligence, and you throw all of the information. And I think increasingly one of the differences is that the AI models are trained on all the world's text and video, but not spatial and physical experiences. So I think that needs to be there. Humans learn spatial and physical before they learn language. And so I think all of that needs to be in the pre-training. And then there's the post-training, which is kind of the upbringing, is where you imbue it, you do reinforcement learning, right? And human kids also go through reinforcement learning, where they do something, they burn themselves, they learn not to do that, or you give them verbal feedback and say, don't do that. And so I think the AI process, again, to use the anthropomorphic analogy, which I think is the best one we have.
Yeah.
I think you have to go through a post-training alignment process in which you do reinforcement of positive behaviors and negative reinforcement on behaviors that we don't want.
Yeah. So in this case, I don't know, what do you think of this analogy? Pre-training is a bit like forming the genetic predispositions. Post-training is sort of molding those in various ways, and so we can hit it from both ends, essentially.
I think that's roughly right. I mean, obviously, we don't have a genetic predisposition that includes all of the world's books, right? Which are in the pre-training corpus. So it's not a perfect analogy, but I think that's about as close as we can get today in terms of understanding how these systems are going to evolve.
Wow, this is fascinating. Okay, so you're going to have one child. This is going to be an experiment in this.
Aren't all kids in some sense that?
But especially the world in which your child is going to grow up, just given who his parents are and what you do for a living. So,
I mean, one of the things I'm most excited in the parenting experience is watching knowledge acquisition in a human, right? Because like it's just like in what sequence do they learn things, and how do they learn things, and how many reinforcement loops does it take for them to learn a specific behavior or to modify a specific behavior? I can't wait to experience that on a day-to-day basis.
Same.
Fascinating.
Okay, so you are a customer, but you're also an investor. So what led you to invest in us?
Honestly, the same thing that led me to be a Herasight customer. When I learned that the technology existed, right? As I did my homework, and I did, as a non-geneticist, right, a non-medical professional, I did as much reading as I possibly could of the scientific foundation of all of this, right? Because is it real? Is it not real? And you really don't know until the kid grows up, right? Like you have to do a very long longitudinal study, right? So I was very interested in the scientific basis for all of this, and Herasight was by far the outlier player in the space in terms of the scientific rigor and the quality of the data sets, the polygenic trait data sets that you train your models on. And so I reached out. I met the CEO, Michael. It was a very, very impressive guy. And we immediately, Justin and I discussed after meeting Michael, and immediately agreed that we want to be customers. And as we were embarking on the customer journey, I also asked Michael, and I was like, "Hey, where are you guys in your startup journey?" And he said, relatively early, and I said, "Hey, can I help?" Right, because I'm a believer that this is the kind of technology, right, that could change. Like, you could eradicate entire classes of maladies, right?
Yep.
I won't call them diseases because some of them are diseases, some of them are disorders, right? Whatnot. But I mean, this is a civilizationally changing technology. And you guys seem to have the dream team to make it a reality, and I want to be part of that journey. And if I can support that journey in some way other than just being a customer, like, very happy to be a customer, but if I can do more, I would love to do more, because I think you guys have the potential to completely change the world.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly why I joined early on. So Michael and Tobias were the co-founders. I came on about 6 months later, but I was a little reticent. I wanted to see like a real commitment to building the best science team. Marketing can always come later. What was your experience with the IVF clinic, with the doctor that you spoke with, et cetera? Because some doctors are against this, just like they're against abortion and they're not forced to perform an abortion, but other doctors are fine with it. So what was your experience?
Yeah, so we work with Dr. Gary Levy at Nevada Fertility Center, and I mean, he was very open. He had not worked with Herasight previously, but some of his colleagues at some of the sister clinics have, and he was very open-minded. He went and did some reading of his own after the initial conversation about Herasight, and then immediately agreed to become a partner clinic and work with your lab. He had a conversation with us where he was like, I want to make sure that you understand what the results might look like, right? And that you may have to make very difficult trade-offs, right? That some people aren't equipped or prefer not to make. And we do understand that. And I think we feel like we are equipped to make them, and we would prefer to make them than leave them to chance, obviously. And so they've been very supportive of the journey, but I mean, kudos to him for reviewing the literature on his own and making up his own mind.
Yeah, exactly. And people sometimes say, well, look, this is probabilistic. What we want is a good answer. Is the kid going to have a disease or not? And I always think, life is probabilistic. All of medicine is probabilistic, from diagnosis to treatment. And so, in a way, this is no different. It does add some complexity, of course, but probabilistic reasoning, that's not unique to this aspect of medicine.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, really, really appreciate you sitting down and talking to us. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks very much.